Regrettably, this summer in Korea has witnessed a series of calamities triggered by unprecedented rainfall, such as the devastating Yekian landslides and the flooding event at the Asong underpass. These disasters resulted in significant loss of life, including the tragic death of a 60-year-old man who went missing in Yekian, Gyeongbuk, and the unfortunate demise of 14 individuals in Asong, Cheongbuk. In today's session, we will delve into the topic of man-made and natural disasters to understand their implications. Man-made disasters and natural disasters. Disasters can be categorized into two types: natural disasters caused by environmental changes like typhoons, floods, heavy rain, droughts, and earthquakes, as well as man-made disasters caused by human accidents, such as fires, collapses, environmental pollution, traffic accidents, nuclear power plant accidents, desertification, and ozone depletion. Natural disasters are often referred to as inevitable accidents or calamities, while man-made disasters stem from human carelessness, mistakes, or imperfect systems. An illustration of a man-made disaster is the case of a factory in Minamata, Japan, which discharged wastewater into the ocean without permission in the 1950s, leading to mercury poisoning and severe consequences for the local residents. Classification between a man-made disaster and a natural disaster. It's not easy to separate between a natural disaster and a man-made disaster when a disaster occurs, because, generally, most disasters happen due to a combination of natural factors and man-made factors. When a natural factor played a huge role in a disaster, it is classified as a natural disaster, and if a man-made factor played a huge role, the disaster is classified as a man-made disaster. For instance, when a disaster occurs because of a natural phenomenon with an unpredictable scale, even though the system was managed properly, it can be sorted as a natural disaster. However, when a disaster occurs because the system was managed inappropriately and managers were careless, it can be categorized as a man-made disaster. So we have to consider how many relevant systems and regulations are managed carefully in general to classify a type of disaster. Difference between a man-made disaster and a natural disaster. The distinction between the two types of disasters becomes most apparent when considering the approaches to recovery and compensation for the damage caused. In the case of natural disasters, such as typhoons or floods, countries, local governments, and insurance companies typically provide compensation to those affected, even when no one is legally responsible for the disaster. Compensation involves paying for the damage suffered. On the other hand, for man-made disasters, the principle of indemnification applies, where those legally liable for the disaster are responsible for paying back the damage incurred. This means that the person or entity with legal liability is required to compensate based on the extent of the damage, which differs from the concept of compensation. For instance, if damage occurs due to mismanagement of public facilities, the person responsible for the negligence should be held accountable and pay for the damage as per relevant laws and statutes.